Done. Okay, go.
Okay, so we had a binding term sheets. Andrea has been negotiating with ProDrone. He went to London. He went to Japan to negotiate. The process was very smooth. They didn't bring any issues on the table, so they were very straightforward moving forward with the investments. We were counting on that, and suddenly, all of a sudden, they just said they were no longer willing to invest in ProDrone. They said they didn't have a good feedback on their side on the wins in Japan. Then Andre found out that was not true through another company in which they invested, I think. So at this stage, we have the binding term sheets. We have to decide whether we should take any actions against ProDrone or not. That's the main decision. What should we do? So
well, we have a commercial relation through ProDrone Europe, right? Yeah. Somewhere in Europe.
Correct.
How is that going?
He has suggested he has suggested that we sue ProDrone's mom, Japan. This is an atypical company with an atypical CEO. And again, we are close to being in a delicate situation again because this investment didn't come through, right? So I mean, like I said, we had 90,000 in the bank. We're now in production season, so we actually have a positive cash flow in a couple of months, but all with all the challenges that I'll describe later. But so again, we were put in a fragile position when he was given assurances, and we spent money going to Japan, negotiating with them, and having the term sheet signed. And all of the engagements that I had with all of you because of that term sheet. I negotiated with Wavec, their potential exit. I was negotiating with you the Boostway.
And with other investors that you stopped discussing.
Yeah.
Correct. So I paused everything else. So we were objectively and clearly harmed by this position and this retract. I've never been in this kind of position before, so I very much appreciate your feedback. My current reading of the situation is that within a limited scope of effort and cost, that we should ask for indemnification. Now, I don't know if I'm being too optimistic, as in putting up a process like this in Japan, could take years and cost tens of thousands, or if sending a letter with the accusation, with the intention, would be enough for him to reach out and do some sort of agreement. My understanding is that he won't. He does not care too much about his reputation. He is on a mission to IPO the group as soon as he can. So I think he's going to disregard any attempt. Now, I would not feel good with myself and with the things that I promised and the time that I spent, not only mine but yours, if at the very least he didn't get some sort of letter to make him aware of this kind of behavior, and we take it from there.
Well, if he's on the way to IPO, we'll be sensitive to having a pending
claim on judicial court.
Law issues. So that's a very positive point. So that we probably want to settle this quickly and
that's also
without too much around.
The lawsuit has to be in Japan. The claim has to be made in Japan, or is that? Is there anything in the term sheet that explains that the prevailing law is Japanese?
No, but according, I have already studied that, and we have to file in Japan. According to Portuguese domestic law on international disputes, we have to file the claim in Japan. That's mandatory.
Can you file?
The letter has been signed by the Japanese CEO, not by the representative in Europe. No.
Yeah, from our we can do now from Portugal, of course. We can prepare a letter claiming for an indemnification. But if we want to move forward with a claim, we have to do it in Japan. Of course, with a Japanese lawyer.
My experience with similar situations is that just doing this claim in a foreign jurisdiction is going to be expensive. And it will take quite a long time. So, but maybe, I mean, if the company is preparing an IPO, they can basically feel threatened if we send a letter. So maybe sending a letter threatening litigation and requesting an amount that's reasonable would be sufficient to get that done. I mean,
Matthias, could you please share your thoughts on what would be a reasonable amount?
Well, I mean, do you have any ballpark figure on the time spent and the money, etc.?
You mean costs, Matthias?
Yes, costs. Yes, costs.
Travel expenses and. But I think that's not the most damaging. I think the most damaging was that ProDrone stopped searching for other investors and stopped negotiating with other investors that were aligned because ProDrone obliged us to do that. So that was an obligation from our side. According to the term sheet, we could not continue negotiating with other investors. So if we don't have now the SME instrument, we would be on a very difficult position at this stage because of ProDrone. I think that was the most damaging.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I have limited information, but I've seen cases in which you ask for something between 50 and 100,000. I think asking more than 100,000 is quite risky. But I don't know.
Those were more or less the figures I had in mind, like 10% of the investment, something like that, like 100 or 100 and something. At least for our first claim, of course. Then if we settle, we can settle for 70 or 80,000 or 50.
Maybe just request 10% of so 10% would be 150. So that would be
or 100,
I think something that is not extremely high, and depending on how concerned they are about the reputation of the company for the IPO, they may just go for it or do a counter offer.
We also discussed the possibility because they were.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I guess I cannot control TAP schedules yet.
Not yet.
Please proceed.
Andre, we will just reach the figure to claim 10% of the investment for 125 to start, and then see if we can settle for a smaller amount. But besides the investments, there was also the licensing issue, because they were willing to license ProDrone technology to Japan and China. And
so that I'm concerned with, because if they're not licensees under goodwill, for me that's a problem. It's not a benefit.
We cannot point again to someone's hand
sell
and say,
our stuff, make it work, pay. Now, I'll tell you one thing. If the figure is 125, I have to say that my motivation is quite low, because if I spend 20 trying, plus my distraction of time and effort, for potentially 100K on top, I'm not very motivated.
Yeah, the idea is to if we make it smaller, maybe they just pay it to go away. If we make it
what you usually do is you send a letter and you say, I will not file a claim in court if you settle for this amount. Otherwise, I will ask for a higher indemnification.
Okay.
So this is what we're claiming just for these.
For the initial phase.
For the initial phase,
And I suggest that we put a budget that we agree on to take this legal action to a certain point and reassess after that.
Perhaps we can reassess after the letter, because we still have to assess what would be the costs in Japan. So we have to speak with a Japanese lawyer, asking for an estimation of his legal fees. So.
Yes, no, of course. I also agree with that. That basically the letter would say that we are going to pursue legal action unless you pay this amount, which is an estimate of our costs, and then and depending on the answer, then we consider the other I mean, it would be great to get a lawyer in Japan that works mainly on success, but I don't know what
My
is the
experience
market
with
there.
lawyers in Asia, more in China, Hong Kong, is they are extremely expensive. I would say in Hong Kong they charge 500 euros an hour, so they are extremely expensive. In Japan, it should be the same. Perhaps not.
Maybe you
so
can write a
much.
letter in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Not as expensive as in the US though,
No, US it's,
and Canada.
yeah.
It's even worse.
Okay.
But nevertheless, we will prepare the letter. I will send the letter myself. Let's see how they react, and then we see how to engage a lawyer in Japan if we decide to do that.
Yeah, good. Okay. All right.
Okay, other topics you want to address?
Just one question. No word from them whatsoever, right?
The word from them is they will not carry out the investments that they have. One in a technology company they invested in went wrong, and so that they have paused all investments in technology companies. The other news that I've heard from other sources that they've invested in another company which works in wind, not technology related, but service related, which to be honest is much more in line with their goals to IPO, because they're looking for companies with high revenue, not with high margin or high potential growth, right? He's more focused on putting numbers onto his balance sheet to IPO.
So they did admit they will not pursue the investment.
Correct.
That's news to me. Okay.
So Andre, basically you don't trust their reasons for discarding this investment. You're just saying that basically they are now looking at companies that will improve their position in the IPO. Yeah.
That is his whole plan all along, and that was very transparent. Now, it happened to be a good fit for us strategically if we could leverage, as is mentioned in the term sheet and Gustavo said, their existing network to expand our technology. So the fit was good for us, although we don't fit very well into his strategy of IPOing.
Okay, and before I go, is there any other leads that you're pursuing in terms of fundraising, or shall we start again from ground zero? Any?
That is one of the sections that I want to address when I do here a bit of a catch up of last year and picking up on the year to come.
It's going to be recorded.
But it's going to be recorded. So yeah, so I suggest you listen to the recording that I'll share after the meeting. And I think this will give you a better understanding of what we're considering doing as far as future fundraising.
Okay, so then I'm going to hang up, and obviously I will listen to the recording once you send it to me. Okay.
Okay, absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, Matthias. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so shall I? Oh wait, now that Pedro's here, perhaps we can pick up on the subject that I just briefly discussed, and that I requested that we wait for Pedro, which is
the conversion of the bonds. Yeah.
So what I shared was that we have, I believe, been both very patient and continuously delaying the conversion. We have been close, but the conversion hasn't happened, and there isn't a foreseeable, clear now pathway for that conversion. And so that we have engaged in the possibility of doing a voluntary conversion at a valuation that we'd have to come to an agreement, that we are not keen on, you haven't been keen and we are not keen either on doing the forced conversion with an intermediary coming to a valuation due to the costs involved.
Yeah.
So that what seemed to be the most straightforward and I guess economically viable solution would be for us to come to an agreement on that conversion.
Right. I agree, and I think that's the right move. We, instead of waiting again for a market value from a round, an investment round, I think we can, and we have conditions to agree on evaluation and just proceed with the voluntary conversion.
Okay. So I don't know how we should proceed exactly. We know we've exchanged just some ballpark figures through emails
Right.
of what that would be. I don't know if that's something to be necessarily discussed here, although we can. I've said a couple of the numbers that we aired. There's no agreement; it's not set on stone. I don't know what your ideas are on that, or if you would like to say a number that you're comfortable with.
I don't have a number on the back of my mind. I just think the way our discussions were going are in the right way, and I trust that we will find an agreement, which has to be vetted by the remaining investors, of course. But I think just like it happened before for our exit, I'm confident that we will get there as well.
Okay, I express exactly the same way, that we've always been amicable and, let's say, coordinated in the efforts of you, obviously, of your ground holders and of the company. So I don't see this as being a major obstacle. If the rest of the shareholders agree, you'll allow us to remain and to offer you a proposal once we're both comfortable with it, and then we can make a decision on that.
Yeah, perfect.
If you can decide quickly, because the conversion period has expired, as you know, so we were aiming to postpone the conversion as agreed until once more. If you, in the meantime, can reach an agreement as to the conversion, we would not postpone it, and we can convert automatically.
Although I guess legally we will have to do a postponement anyway, even retroactively, no? Otherwise there would be a gap.
I don't know, because perhaps if it is ratified.
Yeah, if it is ratified, maybe that
overcomes the issue. Of course, you can do it, but
yeah, maybe a ratification.
That would be perhaps a simple declaration on the conversion agreement or something.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll talk about that, and then we'll come up with a figure.
Okay. Just for us to all be on the same page, do you have something afterwards? Do you have a time to leave today? Just for us to understand.
I was supposed to have lunch with my lawyers. Since I arrived so late, let's see how this goes when it finishes, if I can make it to lunch or if I have to stay a bit longer.
Just see what time are we on now?
11:30.
Okay, so we're 1 hour in. We've planned 2 hours, so I think I don't see a reason for this to go beyond the scheduled time that we had. Not end a little earlier.
Have you started at 9:30 or 10?
10:30.
So 1 hour and you're done already?
Not done. But
No.
We're on a good path.
Okay.
We're a good path to do the 2 hours that we had planned.
I understood that you were about to wrap it up. Okay.
No. Not yet. I think we have at least. But the next thing that I wanted to come on was more to speak to everyone a little bit about ProDrone and what we've done. And 2018 as a focal point, but I'd say more importantly, perhaps 2019 and what's about to happen.
Sorry, Andrea, before that, can you just tell me what were the points covered before?
So we started with the accounts, which you have here with you. I did not share them with the convocatoria por lapso meu, my mistake. So this will not be voted on. The shareholders want to have a look and ask any questions. I explained a bit the context that there wasn't much development. There was an increase of around 30% or 25% regarding the year before, but hindered by the raise. Besides that, we discussed the board, in which I called to the attention of the shareholders that we do not have a functioning board and that is detrimental to the company. And so it is my priority to set that up. I have appointed Stuart, who will be joining on the call. He has joined on the call and will join later. He has been our mentor, and he will be my appointee in replacement of Artur. And I've requested Energy to be as fast as possible to appoint one of their own. They currently are not appointing any.
Okay.
The situation of Wavec is that they have the right to a position on the board until their participation is below 5%, or and so that is the fourth member of the board. What else?
Then we discussed the possibility to transfer the registered office of the company from Sines to Lisboa as well.
And
we
decided not to?
Yeah, and we discussed to amend some articles of the bylaws of the company to speed up procedures and digital signatures
and web conferencing.
Shareholders
Okay.
meetings through teleconference.
But will the headquarters be moved or not?
We decided to postpone the decision on moving the headquarters because some EFD funds in Portugal have restrictions on where they can spend the money, and us being in Alentejo for over 2 years could be an advantage. So we're going to keep it there for now.
Okay.
ProDrone, we were here already.
I got it.
You got the gist of it,
Yes,
right?
yes, the most important part, I guess.
And that was all, right?
Thank you.
Okay, so I've already touched on it, but I'll go over again for Pedro's benefit. That 2018 was a particularly frustrating year for ProDrone, where things did not move forward. We were primed to raise a round. We had done everything right to the point of putting us in a position of going to market with a lot of effort and a lot of dedication. And then we had the RWE fiasco. That sucked a lot of my time and energy, and Gustavo's as well. A big thank you from me to Gustavo for persevering together with me against what must have been an army of about 7 or 8 lawyers from 3 different companies in a process that lasted 10 months. And so that was incredibly draining and without any immediate return. This ended in August. And so the whole first half of this year from a company perspective was done with the expectation of it closing in January, and then it closed to March, and then it dragged on and got into the huge problem that it was. All this happening while our staff, our team, which prepared the solution to put it ready for market, now had to produce, bug fix, do customer support, build new systems. And so it was incredibly stretched, and there was literally almost no growth. There was no ability, there were no resources for us to move much forward in that. At that point of desperation, where we were a month and a half away from going fully bankrupt, Eno Energy stepped up and gave us a lifeline with a bridge funding of 250,000 euros. That is also much appreciated. If we're here today to discuss the options of the future, which is what I'm going to come up next, is because you also came in at the right time. So that is much appreciated. And at that point, I personally, as CEO, felt that I needed a new vision on the company and my role in it and what we needed to do. And one of the ways that I had to do that refresh was to put ProDrone through the Catapult Accelerator in Norway. I believe that we were beyond that point necessarily from a company perspective. You gave me that feedback at the time as well. I couldn't say that I disagreed with that. But at the same time, it was incredibly important for me to gain perspective and to re-energize after the year that we had. On top of that, I also think that the money that came in from Catapult is exactly the money we have in the bank now. So it would have been much more stressful if it would have been a much tighter call than it is without that capital increase. So one way or another, each time before we're about to disappear, we get the breath of life. So I think at least someone is with us. So we've been fortunate that way. But this to say that 2018 was an incredibly frustrating year. It was a year where we felt like we weren't able to move forward, and where we saw many of our competitors move into this market, grow in this market, raise capital in this market. So it was a year where we were not able to be up to speed with what we should have, and quite honestly, what as a track record of the company, we should have.
Andre? Hi,
Yes?
this is Petter from Catapult. Since we are kind of going over stuff we already have, and I have to leave in 2 minutes, I'm just going to say goodbye and thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. Do you want me to share the rest with you as well? The link, if you want to hear anything afterwards?
The link I don't need, but if there's a summary or of some sort in writing, if there is, then I would obviously love to have that as well.
Okay. I think the most important part that I want you to know has to do with future decision making. And I'll try and make a summary of that for you.
Yeah, just make very quick with some bullet points. That would be fantastic.
Sure, Peter. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Andre.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Which leads us on to 2019. So Catapult ended in November, and then right after Catapult, and actually overlapping slightly, was a ProDrone issue. So my attention was then drawn back to raising the capital that the company needed. Very good perspectives. Again, took this investment to term sheet, and again, the investment failed. So until a month ago, we were again trying to figure out how we were gonna survive. And then we got the news about a month ago of receiving what is the most competitive public financing scheme in Europe, SME instruments, where around 3% of projects are successfully approved. And what this essentially means is that the future of ProDrone over the next 2 years is assured, giving us at least a yearly quadruple in financing that we must spend. All right. So if we've been spending to date we've spent around 800,000 euros. We now have 1.4 million that we have to spend in 2 years. So obviously, this is great news. It has been a year of change. On the management side of ProDrone, we were 3 people. It was myself, it was Luis, and it was Artur. Luis was the first person that I had to let go from ProDrone. This happened in March. There were significant and important cultural misalignments. And so our management team that runs the whole company went from 3 to 2. And right after that, Artur and the company also decided to part ways. So the management team of ProDrone currently consists of me. And so the changes have to happen, and soon. The first one of that is making Stuart's role more significant in the company. That has been through being my appointed board member, but also through a monthly consultancy that we have with him currently today. And so he's helping me shape and having management meetings and starting to impact the strategy of ProDrone. Now, importantly, we need to mature as a company, both regarding processes and how we do things, and very importantly, the reliability of our solution and of our output as a company. An important thing to note is that I have personally come to an agreement with the core members of this team. They consist of Tiago and Ilya, who are shareholders today symbolically with 1 share. And also Jose, who is not here with us today because he is not a shareholder now, but that I will be distributing. Do you remember the final number by heart? 28? Is it 28?
28 to 27.
Okay, 27 or 28% of my holding within the company is going to be distributed between the team. This goes above and beyond what is within our shareholders agreement. But I think it is fair and it is overdue. None of this changes the fact that we've been incredibly desperate and the team stuck by us, and now that we actually have some interesting perspective, the team also should be rewarded for what they have done. So I believe this is fair. Stuart played an important role in mediating this. These were difficult conversations to have, but I trust that everyone is happy and on board, and the people who have taken the company here are motivated and happy to take it further. What I would request, and I wanted Peter to hear this, so I might send him the link anyway. I would like everyone to contribute in diluting to an ESOP for future hires. So if I have done my part of distributing to the core team, I believe that future hires are the benefit of the company as a whole, and I would like everyone to dilute to that. This impacts specifically Catapult, as they have the right of their position fully diluted, and so this is something that I think should be addressed. Specifically now, management. I have been way too isolated and alone in the running of this company. The board is one of the issues, but I also need to have people closer to me with more experience to navigate and increase our chances of ultimate success. So it is now one of my top priorities to be able to surround myself with management and operations to allow me to move a level above of the day-to-day of printing photocopies, doing accounting, keeping the company running, essentially. And that I feel that I should be released to be able to look at strategy and ensure that the direction we're going in is correct. Because if I'm not doing that, no one else is. Regarding the development, the team, considering that it's essentially their first job, that the skills that they've earned, most of them have actually been earned within ProDrone and not something that they brought in, I believe they've done an exceptional job. But I also believe, and this was interesting to go to an acceleration workshop that was done about 2 weeks ago, that companies grow faster than people. So it is not reasonable to expect them or me to be able to keep up to pace with everything. We've already gone from an idea to a concept to a prototype to an MVP to market to now being in markets that cover around 25% of the global turbine business, all with the same people, being that no one here is senior. That is an incredible accomplishment, but if we don't change the current configuration, the mistakes that we're currently able to compensate out of tenacity and goodwill, they will come and bite us back. So we make mistakes. We made a mistake this morning that had to be corrected last minute for Brazil. We lack the mentality of industrial processes. And it's not our fault, it's the way it is. The company is simply at a stage where we should have other skills on our team. So we need to make experienced hires. I think that it is a benefit to everyone now, considering that the rest of the team is on board on the equity, that these people, who I believe will have to be well paid, have to be part of the common stake. So I think that's very important. The big focus should be on improving reliability, ensuring that everything works fine. One of the problems we've seen is that our client in Brazil is very flexible and open to our mistakes, but that clients in Europe are much more demanding in that sense. So that has been a lesson learned recently. On the development and strategy side, we have to start addressing data. We now have over 1,650 turbines inspected. This is probably 1.4, 1.3 million images. This is a universe of how many damages?
Right now, we should be closing into 35,000 markings.
Okay, so we now are starting to tether on the terrain that I've always ambitioned ProDrone to be. That we are not a drone company. We are a drone company that must convert into a data company. I think this is strategic for all of us. I think it is not only the right way to go, but it is the way that will most optimize our valuation in the future. To be positioned as someone who is able to collect data properly, process it, and then leverage it, I think is the correct call for ProDrone. Regarding the team, on the immediate, we need to build our team to the SME needs. So we now have an obligation within SME to fulfill certain roles and to have a certain number of team and have a number of, let's say, work package requirements fulfilled. I would appreciate some WaveX supervision on this, and especially on the accounting and the reporting side of things for European projects, because I have not touched that in a few years. So I expect us to quite quickly grow to a 12-person team. The management team needs to grow, developers to increase the solidity and to allow people to actually be more focused and specialized, and then set up sales and operations to engage with our licensee community. I have been doing sales as probably 10% of my time over the past 2 years, and we've achieved the results that we have. But it is absolutely paramount that we have someone fully dedicated to sales who can leverage our existing licensee network. Our licensee network is an incredibly important and valuable source of people operating on the field who can give us insights on what we can look out for, how to improve our system, and how to help them sell more. This is a huge gap, huge hole in our current organizational procedure. Now, if we address the future a little bit, we have 1.4 million to spend in 2 years. That must be spent on a solution for wind, which means that we have to decide how to position ourselves within this particular market. As I mentioned, there are now more competitors, and even with 1.4 million in funding, we are underfunded by a ratio of about 1 to 20 in comparison to the other major players in the world. So this by no means levels the playing field. We are still massively underdogs, whether we like it or not. We have some very good advantages, but I see them as difficult to sustain unless we raise 10 million in the next 6 months, as in shouldering against the competitors in that same way. The examples that we know very specifically, some companies spend per month what we spend per year. Some companies have in stock more money than we've raised altogether since day one. So this conundrum remains, which doesn't mean that we can't hold our position and sustain a position in wind. It simply means that we don't have the same tools to compete in this space. So we're going to have to see how to best position ourselves within wind. What is the great thing? The great thing is that we have many options. We have been addressed and engaged by several companies. We have been close to takeovers in the past. And so there is a general aggregation within the wind industry, and I think that opens several possibilities for us. We have been contacted by Cornice. We have a Brazilian licensee who is more than open to overseeing wind as a whole and perhaps being a global operational arm. There are many considerations to be had within wind itself, and that is one of the things that keeps me up at night. Another major door that has to be opened is, should we address other verticals? Over the past 4 years, we have developed a number of competences, a number of understandings about how the market works, and access to people who need our services, whether they be in our pipeline, whether they be our existing licensees. So a difficult question is, should we consider going into other verticals, which we know have much larger total addressable markets with unmet needs? We just recently had 2 interns from the United States here for a month, and their job was to do a market assessment of what other problems are there that our solution could easily be adapted for. And the 2 outstanding verticals were ship interiors, so indoor inspections, and bridges. The tight line we have to do here as a company is, how deep do we go into wind before we spread out? And what is the right timing for this? Because everyone knows that defocusing is one of the biggest risks that a startup can do. I currently pen towards that we have to go to other verticals, and that timing will be of essence here. Having said that, I don't have a plan for this. This was not an option. This was not something that I could have considered a month ago. So I want to take my time with this. I most certainly don't want my team to be defocused or thinking about anything else other than wind until we make that decision and know what that decision will cost and the resources that that will take. But I think that there are incredible opportunities to be had. And that with what we've learned to date, that Portugal is an incredible place to set up a solution in a cheap and efficient way. We have ISQ across the road, with whom we have a great relationship to get us into the market, understand the problem, and reach an MVP. And then, you know, these markets of bridges and ship interiors, they're not like us, where in wind currently it's a race to the bottom on pricing. The owners are fully cost sensitive. And what we're seeing is competitors driving down the price. Our initial business model had inspections at 1,000 euros, which was already a 1.5% factor lower than rope work. And today, there are inspections being sold at 200 euros. So I think we have weapons to fight there, but I would very much like for us to operate in a market where margins and our added value are significant. For example, a single flare stack inspection in an oil and gas rig, which is about a 2-hour operation, is charged at 20,000 euros. Manual flight, a drone with a zoom. Of course, people have a lot of certificates and stuff that they need to do to go offshore. But you know, that's our revenue from one licensee recovered in probably half a day's work. A ship that is stopped because it has to be inspected, its interiors have to be inspected, is we believe around 150,000, could be up to 150,000 euros a day of lost value. If we can increase that space, the margin added that we bring is huge. So this is not something that I want to rush, like I said, but it is something that I want to look at very carefully. And I will be doing this on the side with small steps. The first two of them, and I'll share, is I'm going to go do a presentation for Gulp executives, not this Monday, the following Monday, and next Monday I'm going to go do a presentation for Agiers, which is a large insurance group. I think insurance is another potential space.
Who in Gulp?
I don't know who in Gulp. This is an initiative do João Milhomens. I don't know if you remember him. No, from ICEF. No. Anyway, he used to work with innovation companies, and now I guess he organizes. So there are 50 Gulp executives that are going to be here in Nova doing one of their things. There are 3 startups that are going to go speak, and then you have isolated with that. So I want to tell them the challenge of, you know, what do you need inspected? What are your problems? And see, just started to get some idea. And this obviously has a huge question on top, which is, should we re-raise, right? So we have this money from the European Commission. We have the obligation to prove that we have an equivalent funding of 700,000 euros to reach the 2 million. These 700,000 can come from revenues, they can come from shareholder contributions, they can come from several different sources. One obvious source is to re-raise, because we currently have goodwill. We have an amazing stamp that shows, let's say, technical and industrial excellence. We know that there is an excess of capital in Portugal looking for interesting projects. We have existing relationships, and they've looked at our business within funds that exist in Portugal today. And so we went from a moment of desperation to a moment of potentially being able to leverage this very well. It's obviously good because they have money to complement the money they're putting in. So essentially the risk, obviously the valuation will have an impact, but the way that they look at the money they're putting in, it is heavily de-risked. Now I don't have a business plan to ask for more money. This is more money than I was looking for before. Now, they always say that it is better to raise money when you don't need it. And I've been in continuous fundraising for 2 years. So it's not another 4 months or 5 months that are going to kill me. I want to get rid of it as soon as possible, but I've never also seen a better conundrum situation, specifically with Stuart's help and credibility, if he works with me as a board member, to raise anywhere between 1.5 and 2 million euros. This is a number that I cannot sustain with a business plan, but it is the kind of situation that would enable us to look at the next 2 to 3 years with some confidence and some space. It would allow me to not fundraise for the next 2 years or have to worry about the complementary funding of the SME. And it would essentially allow us to give it a proper go. I wish to prepare this plan. It is my top priority. This is going to define the people, it's going to define the direction, and all the things that I've aired with you over the past 20 minutes have to be reflected in this business plan and in these projections. So in conclusion, I think that we should look at the past 4 years of ProDrone as a huge struggle of a very short team, brutally underfunded, with highly motivated shareholders who have helped us when we needed it, legal support that has gone above and beyond what would have been expected in order to allow us to navigate the treacherous waters that we've had, and a team that is held together under huge pressure, with what I believe in proportion to the conditions has delivered very good results. But it is all being a means to an end, and the end is right now, where we are actually in a position to make many interesting but critical decisions. We have significant funding. We have a decent cap table. Our cap table is not destroyed by this stage. It's not as if everyone is brutally diluted and we're all wondering what we're doing here. I think everyone here has interesting positions and perspectives. Our technology is being validated, so we're fully in the market, as has our business model, and importantly, our ability to generate solutions cost effectively and get to market. That is something that I believe, perhaps Fernand has a better idea of numbers, but only 5% or 10% at best of startups get to this stage. So now we have a lot of decisions and important decisions to make. I haven't had a lot of time to think about them, and importantly, I don't have a lot of people to think about them with, which is one of the things that I've already complained about. So my priority is now to reach some sort of roadmap and path for the company moving forward. I want to focus on strategy. I want to stop doing photocopying and and facturas and everything that I have to do to keep the company going.
Facturas you should keep doing.
And so this is essentially it. It is my job to set the path going forward. And I have to go through all these other steps to do it. I'm very enthusiastic about the possibilities. Also a little tired, but this is the way that I see our path to date and the outlook going forward. So I very much appreciate your help and contribution. And what I want to do right now is fulfill the SME obligations and send you a roadmap of where I think we should go. Perfect.
Thank you for your comprehensive overview.
Passionate.
Yeah, as well. Is there an estimate time for the payment to be done from SME? Or the first milestone?
This was slightly discussed before you got here. So at launch of project, we get a tranche of 30%. This will be around 430,000 euros. I'm doing paperwork with them now, back and forth. I have requested that the start date be the 1st of July. If that is the case, the payment should be done, and if there are more bureaucracy problems, the payment should be done in the first half of July. I would say that it is unlikely that it is done after the end of July.
Mm-hmm. And has the outstanding amount of the convertible from EDP been paid already, or is it still open?
Great question. That was discussed as well. It has not been paid. I have asked them to give us a delay of payment for 1 month, which would give us to the end of July. We have 90K in the bank. I have to pay this month salaries, wages, which should be fully nullified by the payment of Nordex contract, which is a month and a half late, their payment. So I don't foresee a cash flow problem until the money comes in. But yes, we will have to pay around 35,000 euros to EDP by the end of next month. My part, I've said what I wanted to say.
Can you share with me also the link of the recording?
Of course.
Just one comment. I do agree that you have been quite alone in this process and you need help. And we hear you. And we are here in the Commission of Shareholders, not board members. So I believe most of us try to help you in any way we can, whenever we can. But what you do need, as you mentioned, is to set up a board as ASAP, and that those are the people that should lead you and guide you and share with you this plan that I also agree that is very important to be made about how to go forward with the company. And that will be determined to decide whether we need to go for another funding round, how much that funding round should be, and so on. I think that's the first thing that should be done, but you know that already. That's what you just mentioned. So I totally agree.
Thank you.
So from our side, we try to look for a board member that will probably always be a board observer, but can be present at the board with the regularity that the company defines and providing the value that the company needs. But in the meanwhile, I'm available to come to these board meetings. It's not the same thing, but it's better than nothing.
Understood. Okay. Now, there is one subject that is on the table. Most people here have been involved in that in one way or another before this meeting. It is not something that is easy for me or natural for me. I believe that I have been very consistent in making sure that the company and the team are a priority over myself in the last 4 years. I believe that I have met most of the requirements and sacrifices that are expected of a CEO. I had the lowest company salary until January of this year. I have been in periods of no pay. I've been in extended periods of minimum wage. I've been taking an average of around 10 days off per year over the last 5 years. I've never declared support for personal travel costs or transportations that I use every week, almost non-stop, to go back and forth and solve ProDrone issues. I've never requested any of that money back. I have done the capital increases as requested and taken on personal loans. That puts me currently in a situation of being around 72,000 euros in debt to date. And so now, for the first time, I have been using you all as soundboards to put forward a proposal of my salary. I have spoken to people within this room, people outside of this room. I have asked, Pedro has been speaking to people externally. I understand that this is a sensitive subject, that there are expectations of a CEO, that it is arguable whether you should be compared to people in startups and people in industry and the kind of investing, etc., etc. So it's not a linear process at all. After consulting and hearing, I have prepared a pay package that I want to present to you. This is directly indexed to the rest of the team. So we have had a discussion and we have agreed that, plus or minus details, the difference between myself and the rest of the core team should be of around 25%. I've spoken to them about it. And so I think this is something that we should discuss openly and that I would like to have solved as soon as possible. My idea and my ambition is not to be in any way, shape, or form greedy, and I hope my track record shows that. But it is crucial, if you believe that I am an important part of ProDrone's future, that I am able to have my own personal agenda and life move forward as I dedicate what I dedicate to ProDrone. And by that, what I mean is be able to have a house, be able to have payments, be able to not be negative every month. And so the proposal that I have reflects that. And so I'd like to distribute it and to hear your thoughts and hopefully come to an agreement or a consensus towards what is fair and adequate for me to have as a salary moving forward as is.
So from our side, we understand the efforts that you made so far, and they've been what brought the company here. We understand that the company is in a better position now, of course, than before, and that everyone that is an executive on the company needs some kind of fair compensation. We also believe that, specifically to you, I'm not speaking about Tiago really, but specific you are the main shareholder, and you are deeply vested to the valuation of the equity, and that your salary should allow you to live your life with a house and all of that you mentioned. That's perfectly normal and desirable. But we consider that this offer is a bit above that. We don't think that you should not be here quickly. From our opinion, maybe a few months or maybe a year, but it should be gradual. Getting there should be gradual. From what we have in other companies and what are discussed even in other countries where the cost of living is higher, it will be much difficult for us to accept anything given your stake in the company above 60K. It doesn't make a lot of sense for us. And you said earlier the company will need to step up and hire more senior people that will probably not have an equity stake as you do, or if they do, it will be much smaller. And the company needs the money that is available today to hire these people. If we add it all up, if we take the business plan and increase all these costs, and with the new people that we want to hire, we'll probably see a number that will scare us. It's not a big difference from 80K that are here to the 60K that we consider as a maximum reasonable for the status of the company. But and the overall accounts will not make a big difference. But we think it's important to take things gradually and keep being frugal. What brought the company here today was your flexibility, your frugality, everything, and we don't want to quickly from one moment to the other to throw that out of the window. So from our end, I think it should be more gradual.
I have to say that I think this gross annual salary of 50,000 euros plus the amount that you propose, a gross variable salary, I think it's fair for the work and for the responsibilities of running this company. And I'm comparing with the salaries at Worldback, which is a small institution doing much R&D and also trying to raise funding and all the time. And it's exactly, we come to a conclusion that below this gross salary, we cannot have competent people working with us. And I'm not talking about the CEO or So
I agree.
if I look to this amount, I say immediately it's what I would expect that that Andre would have as a salary.
But today is a very different position. Here is a very important shareholder also. So I think that should also be so easy. The way we consider Andreas should think of his pay is at the minimum to sustain the level of life that he pursues and but his upside will be the valuation of the company, the increasing valuation of the company.
The counterpoint that I have to say to that is I have given up on that for the best part of 4 years. So I have not been paying myself the minimum to have my life. I've been way below that. So even if there is a slight argument that, and let's be clear, and we can discuss what should be the bonuses regarding if you think they're ambitious enough, but these are only paid if they deliver value to the company. So I don't get this if I don't deliver. Apart from that, all the rest, so if I'm willing to go beyond what you think is reasonable, even if you think that this is slightly above what you think, I don't think it's uncompensated for me to have 200 euros more than that. I don't think it reflects what I've put into the company.
Well, it doesn't. Probably 100,000 euros wouldn't reflect what you put into the company. That's not the point.
And for that I wait. And I keep working the way I've been working.
Of course, but what brought the company here has been your effort and dedication for sure. And we all the shareholders appreciate it very much. But I think we need to be somehow cautious. We're not saying we're saying we should be guidable to this.
May I ask you a question? When you mentioned the 60,000, were you referring to fixed and variable?
Okay, so let me just give you the context. We have by shareholder agreement a ceiling for which I need to request your permission to go above. This ceiling is of 50,000 euros, which is what I am proposing as my fixed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this, in theory, I don't need to consult with anyone to give. And I could also have paid myself that without requiring to give you any explanation in the past. Thiago perhaps has a better idea of what has actually been the average. Assuming we're all kind of similar, plus or minus 1 or 2K.
Average through the whole team would be around 1.1K.
But you're talking net? No, you're talking net.
Talking net.
No, that's not what we need. So you can do it back.
Gross, I don't have.
So you're talking about 22 to 25 a year per person for 4 years, plus 72K in debt of shareholder increases, and then I think, okay, you know what I think.
I was just trying to understand where you come from. I have also my opinion about it, and I will give it. I just want to see what's the difference. When you mentioned 60,000
with variables.
With variables, is that what you mean?
Total compensation.
Okay. Well, I'm in line with the wave exposition. I also have to say this does not shock me. I would have a comment to make about the variable side, the variable part, because we need to have concrete milestones to make this work. We don't even know if it makes sense to raise 1 million or 500 or 2 or 5, so that should be adjusted accordingly. Of course, I would very much prefer to give an opinion after seeing a business plan and see what this all adds up to. And that's the only caveat I do, because you mentioned 12 people, a 12 people team, and you're proposing 4 concrete salary packages, which we can sum up, but we don't know about the rest. So for the sake of everyone feeling comfortable and being on board, I think it would be important to have that idea overall. But at this point, what I can say is that these figures do not shock me, having into account the role, the responsibility of the past.
Thank you.
I would say maybe we can just as quick as possible update the business plan with these estimated costs and with the hires that will need to be made and will be made quickly, and that will be expensive for sure. And then we can all provide a final decision.
But that will take time.
Yes, I am against that position, and this is independent of that.
This new business plan should be approved also by the new board members. So
Exactly, that will take time, and that will reflect. That business plan has to reflect all the strategic decisions that I discussed here. Is my priority to build.
That's why I said just on to the part of costs probably update. You said that you had already planned to hire some extra people.
This is within the SME context.
Within the SME contract. So at least to have some visibility on how that's going to impact the costs overall.
So we have an SME project approved with an average cost per head of 5K, which is per month, which is, below this, or rather in line with this, completely in line with it. So the fundings are going to be there, and there's no issue. I think to associate what is the basic should be immediate compensation now that the company. And as a condition for this, obviously only after SME money reaches us. Obviously, if for some reason there's a delay, there is no raise, as has been our principle to date.
What is the percentage of funding, the rate of the SME project?
It is 70%. So the project is 2 million. We're getting 1.36. And the reason I put the 1 million here is that this would assure us that we're compliant with SME. So we need to raise 760 or so to have our component of it, the rest that we owe. And so I put this as my goal because I have done 2.5 years of effort of private and gone to term sheet twice and not been able to close. So it would be some sort of compensation for all the time and effort put in there, and it would assure that our SME money and our future over the next 2 years is assured because we have that and we have the complementary funding. And so this means that we're here for the fight and to take this forward over the next 2 years. And this is what I'm proposing. I think it would be a fallacy to assume that updating costs on a business plan for 4 pay packages of the people who have done the sacrifices to date should be a major factor. Now, I owe you a proper business plan going forward, and this implies exactly how much to raise, which direction we're going, the rationale behind it. I owe you that, but I don't think that should be a factor into what is a pay package that should be, in my view, executed as soon as the money is available.
From our side, I can only say we'll consult and decide together with the rest of the topics. And just for clarity, the remaining will be 25% below.
That would be around. So just so if we just go through this very quickly, our company has been always paying everyone with duodecimos so that our monthly incurrences are consistent and we don't have 2 peaks during the year. The team is being on board and acceptable, and it is much more in line with what you have requested of us, knowing what we have each month to live with. It's how we've been run. So where was I going with this? So everything is added up between the per month. So there's no 14 months on top of this. There's no nothing. What you have is a gross and a liquid, and that's what I think should be considered. In any case, the brutto is the brutto without the variable is not up for grabs, and I have the freedom to do that whenever I wish. I do think that we should look at the other variables. I think that I hope the transport one isn't a big issue. I've thought about different ways to do it. I can either sell my car to the company. I just don't think it's fair for me to continue to have continuous transport expenses. And the other 2 have to reflect value for the company. I think if we double our number of inspections and our number of licensees, it's an obvious increase in value for the company. And I would like this bonus to be across the whole team of 4. So we're all aligned. And then the other one should be specific. I think the most important thing that only I can do is to raise the complementary funding that I owe the SME. And so I put 1 million plus because I don't think it would make sense to raise under that. It can be more, but between 1.5 to that is what I don't think is justifiable without the business plan that I owe you. And which explains the rationale behind these two.
And are these on-off milestones? Are they on-off, meaning that if you don't reach? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's my proposal. But as I said, this is also the first time that I make a proposal of this. I've never even considered this before. But right now they are as on-off. Now, what I would appreciate is that we set, and as Renato made clear, I understand that people are not willing to make a decision now. But what I think would be important is that we set a time for these decisions. And I think it will have a very beneficial effect on the company and on the staff if we're able to close and deal these things and have people feel that they're being compensated for what they've put in.
So the end of next week as a deadline.
That works perfect for me.
If you all agree, I can send you a draft of the resolution on all items that we have discussed on the meeting. Of course, with some comments and some, well, the issues that still need to be discussed. I would put a comment on there, and then I would share the document, and then anyone could comment, add what think it would be good at the document, and at the end we sign it. And we have everything agreed.
Technically, as a bondholder, I don't even have a say. I'm just giving my opinion, but I don't have a say on it.
Okay, you were here also because we were discussing one of the items in the agenda.
Is a conversion.
Is the conversion. So.
Right. But you agree that I will not have to sign off on that draft that you will prepare.
No, unless we decide to
convert before.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So having said that, I think I can turn off the recording.
Yeah. Good. Is Stuart still there?
Stuart, yes.
Of course I'm still here. Of course.
You have been so quiet.
Stuart, if there are any remarks, I think I made. So I've spoken considerably about you, with you online and without you online. But I think that the main thing that I'd like to say to you in front of everyone here is thank you for your availability and your support for ProDrone as a mentor, and now more recently as our future member of the board. I really look forward to working even closer with you. And yeah, I think at some point you should meet everyone. And I'd ask if you have any further comments or points regarding the things that were discussed. I'd say specifically the last one, which is the one that I guess has had the most debate.
Yeah, well, thanks, Andre. It's a real privilege to be part of the journey with ProDrone. You know, I'm super excited about what the next couple of years could bring. I've obviously seen a lot of companies in a lot of places, and I think you're very well positioned for something quite special over the next couple of years. The SME Instruments was an incredible moment of serendipity, so very excited about that. I think you guys have debated very carefully. I think it's a fair outcome. But I also think it's quite a fair package as well, and I'm particularly keen to see the mirror of the package to the rest of the team. I think that's a very important part of the motivation of over the next 3 to 6 months to see that kind of lift in the team. So keen to see the resolution quickly for that purpose.
Yes, that's right.
I think we did a lot of soul searching and good team orchestration to get to things like the 25% feeling fair, the kind of numbers the team needed, and that kind of set your numbers and so on. So I wouldn't want to see that drift at all. I sat in a number of those meetings, and I know you had a number of them without me as well. There's been a lot of discussion and good dialogue to get to that level. So, yeah. And I think it's been interesting to see the insights from the shareholders today and just kind of understand a little bit better about people's motivators and drivers into the business. And thank you all for sharing on that.
Okay, thank you very much, too.
Okay. Bom fim de semana.
And we're going to finish on time.
Right on time.
Congratulations.
Bye, Sue. Talk to you soon.
Getting good at this finishing on time thing.
And we're
Well done, everybody. Turbine 5 is done.
Okay, so Artur is, as a former board member, present through phone while he's in Italy doing inspections for Generg. We saw a number here. I wasn't sure who it was. It's a +34. Are you there? Ah, he left. Anyway, yeah. So he's been in the car traveling around. Did I stop it?